Hello and welcome to Lazada Insider, featuring knowledge that makes a difference. We share trusted insights, forward-looking perspectives, and exclusive expert interviews to keep you ahead of the curve.
Hello everyone, I'm Chen, your host today. COVID-19 is a huge disruption to consumer life in Southeast Asia. The consumers navigated through the strictest period of lockdown, began to find a new normal, and now slowly started the recovery phase with the introduction of vaccines. Consumer lifestyles and behaviors keep evolving along the way. These changes have very important and profound implications to businesses and brands in Southeast Asia. Today, we are very excited to be joined by expert Prasad from Ipsos, one of the top market research firms in the world, to share his latest insight on the evolving consumer lifestyle behavior. Hi, Prasad. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Chanjan. Looking forward to our discussion.
First of all, you are the director for Ipsos. Please tell us more about your positions and what it entails.
Yeah, so in brief, I work in the client organization at Ipsos. So at Ipsos, we have teams that specialize in different marketing areas like marketing, advertising, loyalty, and so on. Client organization is a role that spans across the different expertise areas. And a key job is to make sure that you provide key accounts with a single point of contact and can help them in the different research needs. That's my role at this company at present.
Sure. And now let's shift our focus to the consumers. Let's start with the changes in consumers' behavior and lifestyles in Southeast Asia. What are the changes you noticed in Southeast Asia over the past 1 year? And is there any differences across countries?
Okay, so just a quick step back, and so when I answer your questions, I'll often refer to an exclusive survey that Ipsos has done in Southeast Asia on the impact of COVID and how that's impacting them, their sentiment, their behavior, and so on. When I look at that, at our specific study which we did in Southeast Asia, it covered all the 6 major markets: Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and we looked at it in 3 different time periods post-COVID. So in May of last year, then later on in around September, October, and then February of this year. So we have asked a series of questions. 90% questions are the same, so you can track over time to see how the sentiment, how the impact of COVID has changed over time. One thing I'd like to say is it's a moving target. As you may know, since you're based in the region, the COVID situation is changing almost on a week-by-week basis in most markets, and people are adapting as it goes. So in some markets, it's like a cycle. We're going back and forth in the same stages. In some, it's a nice linear trend, and that also impacts in how consumers respond. Yep. So what I'd like to say is, first of all, in Southeast Asia, it has made a big impact on people's behavior. Again, even if I were to mention some non-Ipsos sources, so DBS Bank, the largest bank in Singapore, mentioned that in the first 3-4 months after the COVID pandemic started, mobile payments usage have gone up, and they have had 100,000 new mobile payment users. So that's a huge number for a market the size of Singapore. And again, this is something we are seeing in also different markets. As you can also know, if you look at the press, there are a lot of terms being thrown about unprecedented, game-changing times, the new normal. But the point we'd like to make is some changes are here to stay, and some are more like a short-term impact, and then things go back to a normal post the pandemic, while some don't. And it's very key to understand what will change, what will not. A longish answer, but I wanted to set the context right because there is a lot of press out there, and it's important that your consumers get the right perspective. So what I'd like to say is COVID impact has been strong in the Southeast Asian consumer mindset. What we do see, however, is that over time, different markets are responding differently. Singapore is getting a lot more positive, as in they see things are improving, and it's reflected in their confidence level, in their economic outlook, and all that. On the other hand, markets like Malaysia and to some extent Thailand, the impact is actually getting a lot more negative than, say, October of last year. So new cases are rising. The Movement Control Order, MCO, in Malaysia is already again being reimposed in some markets. That tends to have an impact. Yeah? So different markets are in different stages. And before we talk about the impact on products and services, just one key point I'd like to say is the huge impact of this whole COVID pandemic on mental health. Almost 57%, so more than half of our Southeast Asia consumers say that their mental health is not in a good position post the pandemic. Others say it's unchanged and so on. So that's a big number, more than half saying that. Also, what we say is people who say this also has changed over time. In Singapore, now there are fewer people saying that. So not that many people are mentally stressed out as say 6 months back than now in Singapore. On the other hand, in markets like Malaysia, we have more people saying that it's affected their mental health now compared to say 6 months back.
Yeah. Sure. That is very interesting. And how about consumers' pain point? Given the changes in behavior and lifestyles, is our customers facing the same pain point as before?
Yes, a lot of consumers feel that the sentiment, the economic outlook is not as positive. And again, it could be their own job being impacted, job security-wise, income-wise, maybe there's a pay cut, or they know of someone who has had this kind of a situation. And that does cascade and it does affect their own outlook. So 3 out of 4 people in Southeast Asia say that they are using their savings for day-to-day expenses. That's a huge number. Again, this is claimed survey data. So they do say that post the pandemic, the income is taking a hit. Now they have to dip into the savings. They are also a lot less confident of buying a big ticket item such as a car. More people are saying they don't want to do that. And as an aside, I mean, even from a different survey, even if you look at the luxury sentiment, people are not buying luxury watches for the simple fact that, oh, I'm not socializing anymore, so who do I show my watch to, So things like that. It has the impact at both ends, the mass market and the luxury segment. People are also getting more mindful about spending. So they do say that they think twice before spending on some item. However, on the flip side, it's not all doom and gloom. So there are pain points, but there are people, the way consumers try to adapt to the pain point is they go online to seek out more information about the products and what they can get, maybe a better deal, a faster deal, and so on. So they are going more and more online to buy items. So we are seeing across all 6 markets in Southeast Asia, consumers saying that they're doing a lot more online purchases now than they did before. And again, in markets like Vietnam, the increase is huge. So more Vietnamese, for example, in Southeast Asia are saying that they do online purchases. We have more people in Southeast Asia saying that they're doing mobile or cashless payments now than before. So because of hygiene concerns, so maybe a lot more familiarity. If I use Singapore as an example, now everyone needs to have this Trace Together app to enter any place. So by default, even those who are not that comfortable using smartphone and apps, maybe the older generation and so on, now are on board more or less. Of course, there's the option of getting a token. But that does make a big impact on how people break down barriers when it comes to things, mobile things, online, and so on. So there is that flip side too. So yes, there are pain points. People are more mindful, but on the plus side, they are learning how to cope with it. And again, the point I want to make about coping is we had also asked people in Southeast Asia, what's their view about the pandemic now? So do they feel impacted, or are they in a shock? And almost most of them have said, adapted to the restrictions and have settled into new routines. That tends to be the most common response. So people are by nature adaptive, and no matter what you throw at them, they learn to adjust to that. Of course, there are people at edges we need to take care of who are a lot more severely impacted income-wise, mental health-wise. But by and large, people have adapted around it and are learning to deal with these pain points.
So when more brands are putting emphasis more on the online or the multi-channel or the omni-channel worlds, so what is your advice to the businesses and brands in terms of how to create differentiations in this omni-channel? Yeah.
Yes. Now this is also the key thing I want to make. So of course things change, and change is inevitable. So change normally is gradual, but when there's a shock to a system like what we're seeing with COVID now, or in some, it could be in different market, different shocks. So I know we're not talking of non-Southeast Asia market, but Hong Kong, what the market is going through, and so on and so forth. Big changes for the last 2 years, even before COVID. That does have impact in terms of how brands are impacted, how behavior is impacted. There are 2 things I want to point out over here. First is trends. Some trends happen over time and are here to stay. But some core essentials still remain the same. So yes, of course, how you get to the consumers is the online part. But why would it choose you? That part still is the same. So at the end of the day, why are people buying your brand, your product? They're buying you because they feel there's something about your brand that's better than the available options. Better in terms of quality, better in terms of price, or maybe just easy to buy. Or when I'm buying one product, that was the first product that popped up. So things along that line. So you should not lose sight of the core premise. The core premise being, at the end of the day, people choose you because you have something to offer which the other options are not offering them. Other brands are giving, the competition not giving them. It could be, again, as I said, it's about quality, it's about price, it could be about just perceptions and what it does to you. So don't lose sight of that. Understand what it is that people are looking at your brand for. At the same time, see how do you get connect to the consumers. The how part is what's impacted, but the why they buy you, I think more or less still remains the same.
Cool.
And maybe here I can also, so if you, sorry to interrupt, maybe here also I can plug in a bit. So we have, for your audience, actually, I might want to suggest a free and a very valuable resource called ipsosglobaltrends.com, in which we have actually done a lot of analysis on global trends that we're seeing and what trends are here to stay even post-COVID. I'm pretty sure, depending on the product category, whether it's electronics or perishables or fashion, your audience should find something of relevance and of interest to them over there. So do check out ipsosglobaltrends.com.
Good. I think you kind of like anticipate my next questions. So it's my last question for today. So are there any emerging consumers' behavior that brands and businesses need to pay attention to?
Yes. Two things I would like to talk about. So the thing I just mentioned about that some trends are here to stay. So the way we look at it, and we look at what's happening in the market, it changes from two different angles. One is what we call signals, and one is what we call trends. What it means at the end of the day, signals is something a bit more temporary, tactical. Oh, there is a lockdown and you can't go out to eat, then you of course order more home delivery. That's a point in time, and that's limited to a specific window. Trend is something a bit more long term. So even before COVID, there were people ordering food at home. If there's parties and all that, that was like a default thing. Instead of cooking, you just cater for different food, taste halal, non-halal, and whatnot, and different diet preferences, and you order different food. So that's those are the long-term trends. So we look at things into two ways: signals and trends. It's important to understand what's here to stay and what's not. And that's easier said than done. I get it, which is also why it's quite important to keep a regular pulse on consumers. So yeah, of course, you can look at trends at ipsosglobaltrends.com, but also what's here to stay is also going to depend a lot on how markets evolve over time. About 6 months back, when we did a consumer survey in Malaysia, a lot more people were optimistic about the future. Oh yes, I think we hear a COVID about in other markets, but we are fine, everything is fine. And then there was this huge spike, and then there is no plans for, at least the perception is the government has no plans for vaccination, and there's whatnot. And then suddenly there's doom and gloom. And if you look at the consumer sentiment in Malaysia, huge decline from 6 months back. And now that has an impact on what brands and businesses need to pay attention to, because if the scenario changes, if the market condition changes, it is going to have an impact in terms of how they interact, what they do or what they buy. Again, a lot of marketers are getting optimistic about the whole vaccination, and once that happens, things will go back to normal. I just want to highlight a couple of things. First of all, things will not go back to normal because there are some behaviors which are here to stay, as we keep on saying throughout the interview. That's one. Secondly, the vaccination is a long-term process, so not all markets would be vaccinated on the same timeline. So looks like in Southeast Asia, Singapore might get vaccinated by the end of the year, but some markets might not be done vaccinating 70% plus of the population by end of next year. So it's a long window. Now that has an impact on how things go. Also, when we do a lot of consumer survey, there's a lot of reluctance in some markets to get vaccinated. And for some reason, Philippines, for example, is a market in Southeast Asia which has the highest resistance to getting vaccinated among all the 6 countries. So 1 in 3 people in Philippines say they have no intention of getting vaccinated. And as long as there is a sizable chunk of population who don't want to do that, this problem is not going to go away anytime soon. So if all this, so marketers need to be aware of this and pay attention to that, that different markets will come out of this at a different time. So they shouldn't be one mass strategy for all Southeast Asia. They will have to adapt for each market differently. That's one. And secondly, you need to understand what trends are here to stay post the pandemic, the post normal behavior, and be mindful of that in your marketing plans going forward.
Cool. Thank you very much for your sharing. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much, Prasad, for insightful sharing. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you again.
Same here, Chan. Again, excellent questions. And if at any point you need any further details, let us know. We have data for almost all data sets so far was backed by data, so we are happy to share that.
This is Lazada Insider. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you click follow and subscribe so you don't miss our latest insights and expert interviews. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Lazada.